Hello, hello. We are just starting this new weekly, not a podcast, but what we call a blog or a live stream. It's November 18th, 2024. We are going to talk about the policies that the Trump administration is going to implement and what impact it will have on the next few years of the housing industry. I'm going to give some time for people to come in. For those of you who are going to be live, this is also being recorded. It'll be on my YouTube channel. So I'm looking forward to an exciting session here to share with you a lot of ideas. I'm going to turn off this music so you can hear me better and my guests. So just give me 1 minute here. All right. So anyway, welcome to my channel, Home Savvy Central. My name is Mike Patel. Before I get started, let me introduce to you a special guest all the way from Atlanta, Marietta, Atlanta. His name is Matthew Share. So rather than me introducing him, I'll just have Matthew share a little bit about him. Let me bring him on stage. Can you see me and hear me, Matthew?
Yes, I can.
If you can introduce yourself just so that people know.
Sure.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm over in the Atlanta metro area, and I've been selling real estate here for a little over 20 years. And more recently, I've also, in addition to being a real estate agent, I've become a licensed mortgage loan originator. So I've become kind of a one-stop shop and very knowledgeable about loans and home sales.
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons I call Matthew, for two reasons. One is obviously he's in Atlanta and I'm in Southern California, Orange County, and I'm Hills to be specific. And the market is here than in Atlanta or the East Coast in general. The other reason I wanted Matthew to be on this live show is because he also knows lending a lot more than I do. And one of the Trump's policy that he's going to be implementing, and if he implements, is going to be mortgage. He has promised, and by the way, just as a disclosure, and I think Matthew, you want to say the same thing to you before we get started, this has nothing to do with Trump or Democratic Party or Republican Party. All we're discussing is Trump is the president-elect. We know from 2016 presidency and from his campaign and from his website, there are some policies that the Trump administration wants to implement. And we are picking 4 or 5 of those, which will have a direct impact on housing, specifically on housing prices. Is it going to be up or down? Is it going to be affordable? Is there going to be more inventory? And the key thing that everybody asks, and that's what Matthew will talk about, is how much impact will it on the mortgage? So we'll talk about that. So to get started, I'm just going to read out an article so that we're going to discuss something that's in the article. It's not something that we dream up of. So this is the thing. Here's what the Trump presidency could mean for the housing market, experts say. And one of the things he talks about is, for example, I can barely read it. It's hard to read. We're going to open up tracts of federal land for housing construction, Trump said during August 15th news conference. We desperately need housing for people who can't afford what's going on now. So let me stop sharing. So that's one of the things we're going to discuss. And we won't start with that. But one of the policy is deregulation and rezoning. And one of the things he wants to do is take a federal land. And we know that about 20 or 30% of all the federal land is owned by the federal government. And he wants to take some of it and change it to a zoning for housing, affordable housing. So we'll talk about that later. But I think the first topic and let me share with you some of the topics we're going to cover. And then Matthew, I'll have you start with what's most favorite for you. One of them is the mass deportation of illegal immigrants and the impact it'll have. That's one topic we want to discuss. The second topic we want to discuss is lowering the mortgage cost. He had said in his presidency that he'll bring back the mortgage rates to 3%. We'll see. The other topic is deregulation. How is the red tape affecting the housing industry and how he can drop deregulation and permits? And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is rezoning of the federal land. So should we just go in order, Matthew, and just discuss it?
Yeah, I'll follow your lead.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. You know, you're in Atlanta. I'm in California. The border crisis is very, very important. That's one of the reasons he won. But like I said, we're not talking politics. Now he has a chance to implement these policies. One of his biggest policies, he's going to deport anywhere from 15 million to 20 million illegal immigrants back out, whether he has to claim as an emergency or federal emergency or not. So knowing that, I'll give some of my opinions what will happen, but knowing that almost 15 million immigrants will be gone, we know that the more immigrants there are, the more housing we need. They need rentals. If there's a demand for rentals, the prices of homes go up, because as rental demand goes up, rental prices go up, then home prices go up. So it has affected in certain areas. If they leave and the demand drops, what will be the impact based on your opinion, Matthew?
Mhm. Well, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really even thought of with the rentals. I had thought about what the impact would be, and in general, I think one of the things that needs to be considered is, even though they're not supposed to, I think a lot of builders and even home renovators and stuff, a lot of the people that do the work, painting and carpentry and all that, might be here illegally. And if you remove all of them, the cost of labor will rise, which raises the cost of building or renovating, which could actually negatively, impact and raise the home prices indirectly. So that was kind of the perspective that I had thought of. But what you're saying about the demand for rentals going down, I hadn't even thought of that until I heard it from you.
Yeah.
So that's very insightful.
Well, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense,
Yeah.
though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let
I'm
me
always so focused on sales and not rentals in
Right.
my market. So
Exactly.
really.
Well, let's talk about it. And I think what you said, I totally agree with you, and that's a very good point, because as these immigrations leave, in fact, there's a what do you call? There's data that in any given industry, specifically house cleaning, gardening, construction, labor work, farming, right? The amount of illegal immigrants working in those sectors, even though they're illegal, there's proof that is in those sectors, this amount of workers, illegal workers working in those sectors is significant. So if all of those leave, that'll create a shortage of labor, which will increase the pricing or increase the wages, right? But let's go back a little bit and say this, the Trump administration talks about the surge. We've had a lot of surge in immigrations in the last 2 or 3 years, which is pre-pandemic. But if you look at the price, if you look at this map here, can you guys see the map here, the chart?
I see it.
The chart shows that in 2019, this is the COVID days, the prices jumped during the COVID 2020, 21 up to 2022. That's where the home prices surged, right? The immigration surged after that, 2022, 2023, and the home prices have not really surged. They've kind of gotten along and gotten up 3 to 5%. So of course, it takes 2, 3, 4 years for the impact to be visible, and we don't know what the impact is. I'm sure there's a big demand in states like Arizona and Texas and other states, Louisiana, where they were headed to. But they're shipping them out, in first-class planes and first-class luxury hotels in New York and other places. So we won't know the impact of it. But the figures are misleading, because on one hand, the prices surged before the mass immigration coming in. So now we don't know if the prices are going to go up or not. But as you said, Matthew, because of the labor shortage, it'll create, home prices will definitely go up.
Yeah. And I think that surge is primarily was a result of pandemic related activity. When you pump $3 trillion into the economy and give a lot of money to business owners and all that, and you at that time, the Fed probably would have started raising interest rates if COVID never happened, but they kept them low a lot longer. So
Right.
you had kind of the perfect storm of people having extra discretionary income. Many, not, there were people that unfortunately just got very hurt by COVID. They
Right.
were out of work and did, but a lot of the wealthier people that knew how to work the system or whatever, and knew
Mm-hmm.
about all the benefits that were available to them, actually had their best years ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you did have a lot of money in the economy, um, and so people had extra money, and also, and they weren't spending as much on restaurants and going out, so they wanted to spend it on something. And with the interest rates as low as they were, it became very desirable to put money into a home. And
Mm-hmm.
and then I think the really smart people really realized when they passed I think it was the CARES Act that put the $3 trillion in the economy, that printing money like that would eventually lead to inflation. That
Mm-hmm.
is a natural progression. And when you have an inflationary market, the smartest place to put your money is in assets.
Right.
Gold, silver, and housing is one of those assets that's
Right.
likely to appreciate.
Right.
So,
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And let's go back to what I mentioned earlier. I found the charts. I put it up there. And by the way, I didn't know that there was two kinds of immigrants: unauthorized immigrants and authorized immigrants. But we'll leave it at that. Okay. This chart, it shows here that share of U.S.-born authorized and unauthorized immigrant workers in top 15 occupations for unauthorized immigrants. It shows a chart of how many maids and housekeeping cleaners are out there in the industry. When you look at unauthorized immigrants, it's 5.66%
mhm.
versus authorized immigrants is only 2.37%. Could it be that they are cheaper? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well,
Why is
yeah,
it,
the
you know?
I think authorized immigrants would be people who immigrated here legally, went through the right process and didn't just jump
Right,
the
right.
border.
Okay, hold on.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they are, they're, you know, perfectly okay to be here and hire, and they're paying taxes, and
Hmm.
they're just like anybody else who lives here. I think what Trump is going after is the unauthorized immigrants that just hop the border. They usually work for cash, don't pay taxes, and
Okay.
because
Yeah.
they can't legally be hired. They don't have a whatever that form is. There's like a tax form
Right.
HR has to collect from employees or
Well,
whatever.
some of them probably don't even have bank accounts, let alone
Yeah,
charts.
they may not
You
have
know,
even the ability to get a bank account here.
exactly.
So
No social security number, no bank account. And mostly they don't want an account because they don't want to give their address or things. So because they're illegal. But it's funny to me, if you look at let's go to the categories. First of all, it's maids and housekeepers, 5.66% unauthorized versus 2.37 authorized immigrants. Let's look at the cooks. And these are a large number of workers throughout the USA. And this is throughout USA, not in any particular states like Texas or Arizona, where they are closer. The numbers may
mhm.
be higher over there compared to in Montana, right? So let's look at the cooks. Unauthorized is 5.58% versus 1.89%. Construction and laborers, 5.53%, 1.53% authorized. Imagine if all these construction workers stop working. I would guarantee, well, I won't guarantee, I can't say anything, but my gut feeling is that the new construction industry will come to a great slowdown, my opinion.
Absolutely, they're going to have
You
a
know?
hard time producing new
Yeah,
houses,
because
and they're going to have to pay more to get them
yeah,
done.
yeah, I've been in Texas and I've been in Arizona and I've seen these construction workers working at noon in hot sun. They're on top of the roof working.
Yeah.
You know, let's look at grounds maintenance workers. That includes gardening. What are the construction sites, yard cleaning in commercial places, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Four
and I think it's
percent.
really interesting that most of these categories, except for possibly cooks, are things that and agricultural. The other ones are all things that directly affect the housing market.
All of it, yeah, other than the cooks, right? Miscellaneous agriculture workers. That's important too because 3.83%, and the last one is janitors and building cleaners, 3.75%. Imagine all those commercial buildings, residential, where there's a lot of cleaners and janitors.
Yeah,
That's
apartment
a big chunk.
complexes,
Yeah,
they're going to have to absorb that.
exactly. So does anything seems out of line on these charts or
I'm actually kind of happy to see that the numbers are only averaging about 5%. I actually would have expected a much higher percentage. Um, so losing 5% of the construction workers might not be as it's still going to affect things the same way, but I was thinking it was more like 25 to 40%.
well, here's
Which,
the question,
you
right?
know,
Whoever did this survey, I'm
yeah,
sure there was a lot of work to it. How accurate is it? Because how are they going to find out who's illegal in the first place?
yeah.
So
And I think what
if I
happens a lot is the companies, there's a lot of subcontracting in the construction business. So
right,
the builder hires a legitimate company that's owned by a legal resident here. But then, they hire laborers, and a lot of times there's not enough checks going on to make
right,
sure that the subcontractor of the subcontractor
yeah,
is legal.
yeah,
And
exactly, right.
so
So what I'm saying is there's no way to find out. I mean, I'm glad whoever did this report worked very hard and is accurate. But in my opinion, my gut feeling is the unauthorized immigrant percentage should be at least double on each category. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but hey,
that's what I was saying. I would have
you
expected
know,
higher numbers.
it's my opinion, and it is what it is. And if
Yeah.
if you're watching or if you're looking the um, watching the recording, please let us know what you think. We would like to know. Please also ask us any questions if you have any. We'd love to answer any questions. Matthew or I will answer it to you live, or if it's a recording that you're watching, we'll answer it in the content on the content. But yeah, give us your opinion. I mean, I just gave mine, and if you have different opinions or better data than what we have, please share it with us. So Matthew, I'm going to go on to the next one, but I'm going to conclude that if there is mass deportation, not conclude, but I'm going to summarize that if there is mass deportation in large numbers, it'll increase home prices to go up because labor cost will go up. Can we leave it at that and move on?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Unless you have a different opinion, of course, that's my opinion. But all right, so let's go on to the next one. This is a very interesting one, and I didn't mention it, I think, when we first introduced that what topics we were going to cover. And this is implementing higher tariffs, especially in China, where we get a lot of our goods. Trump administration was talking about 20% certain areas and up to 100% in certain categories. So first thing is the impact on construction cost, right? Tariffs on imported goods, example, lumber and steel, increase cost for builders, which are passed on to the buyers. So I wanted to see what you think will happen if the tariffs are higher, how it will impact our consumers and the construction of homes, etc., and the
Yeah.
prices.
I think there's been, a little bit of a misnomer about that throughout,
Mhm.
the campaigning. Trump's campaign made it sound as if the tariffs are paid by the country that's importing their product here. What really would happen, though, is let's just say that the builders are getting some lumber from China. Okay.
Mhm.
The builder is going to have to pay more money for the supplies, is what it comes down to. So again, now they're getting the double whammy. They're getting the higher labor costs for the
Mhm.
deportations combined with higher material costs, and it's going to have a very similar effect. It's just another thing on top of all that. So yeah, I mean, it will be passed on to the consumer, and
Right.
there's not really any two ways about that. I don't see any other way to see it. you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
um,
what I think. I mean, my thing is, uh, and of course, this is a big if these are
yeah,
put in place, and things are not going to happen on day one, right? Things have to be implemented or set forth. Congress has to approve it, or
exactly. Yeah, and
committees
my
have to
thought,
approve it, and
right?
then the impact could be 3 years from now, 2 years from now. So we're
Yeah,
talking long-term impact. It's not
also
going to
I
happen
think
overnight.
right, and also I think even though he announced some crazy high tariffs, like 60%,
Hmm.
100% for China. I don't know that when it actually comes to implementing it, that could be a posturing type thing, a negotiating tactic where he says it's going to be a 20% tariff and then it ends up being a 5% tariff,
Right.
It is very possible that when it actually plays out, it may not be as severe as what he
Right.
said. And if it's not as severe, it won't have as severe of a negative impact either. And there are some positive things to the tariffs. It might cause, maybe it would generate some more business for US Steel and other.
Hmm.
There's a lot of towns, like I went to college in Buffalo, New York, and there was a big steel plant there that was pretty much boarded up. you know Maybe it'll bring back some jobs there and revitalize some of those towns. So there are, there's pros and cons to the
Right.
approach, but I definitely could see it raising costs.
Right. And the other con about it is, other good thing is that, it, like you said, it can bring a lot of manufacturing over here rather than making some things, screws and nuts and bolts in China, make them here. Now what you're doing is you're you're erecting a manufacturing plant, you're buying land, you're employing some people, you're going to bring restaurants and housing over there. So it's good,
Yeah,
but
I
this is
mean,
not going to
yeah.
happen right away.
No, and we've gotten so accustomed to, the time to deal with this was before we started importing everything. Back in, I think it was like the 1970s or so, when we started this whole process of, oh, it's cheaper to make it in China and ship it over.
Hmm.
And that the time to address it was back then. Now we've kind of made our bed here.
Yeah.
We've become so accustomed that people aren't going to want to pay more, and the labor costs are, if the American workers would be willing to work for the same wages as the Chinese workers, then it would be fantastic if you
Hmm.
could, but they can't. In fact,
Yeah.
it would be below minimum wage.
Right.
So
Right.
um so there's, it's, and if you have to pay more for labor, the cost of the goods are going to go up. It's going to be
Right.
passed on to the consumer
Right. Right.
every time.
One of the two of the biggest goals of the new administration coming in is making homes more affordable and having more inventory.
Hmm.
But the two things we talked about, getting rid of immigrants will drop the demand, right? That'll push the home prices up because of construction and everything. And when we talk about tariffs, it may do the same thing, because as home prices go up, home goods price goes up, 2x4 prices go up, nails,
Hmm.
everything goes up. Housing will cost more, and it's going to take longer, because if you stop importing from China, for example, by the time you manufacture, the demand may not be caught up. So not only will it raise the prices, it'll drop the inventory and not increase it, because it's going to take longer to build. And if the labor is not enough, labor workers that are gone, that'll
Yeah.
delay even more. So it could backfire, but who knows, right?
And I'm going to if you don't mind, I'll put my lender hat on for a minute.
Put it on.
This is
Yeah.
directly related to
Yeah.
lending. On the lending side of things, I think we're already seeing the impact, because if you've been following interest rates, you'll know that the Fed just cut. They did a 0.5% cut and another 0.25% cut. So we're down 0.75% on
Hmm.
the short-term rates. However, mortgage rates have gone up with both of those cuts.
Right.
So, and I'm pretty certain that the reason for that is mortgage rates are not controlled by the Fed. They're basically based on what the future projection of what the cost of borrowing money will be in the long-term future, because you're talking a rate that's going to be for 30 years in the future. So they have to kind of
Hmm.
look at the future cost of borrowing. And I think that the reason, in spite of the Fed cuts, that mortgage rates are not declining is that they're anticipating that the potential of the tariffs and all these things will actually be inflationary beyond housing. Like even just making an orange at the grocery store cost more because of the
Mm.
agricultural workers that were
Right.
deported or whatever.
Yeah.
And all these things, if it causes the price of things to go up, then we've got our inflation rears its ugly head again, and so that causes a ripple effect, and I think they're kind of budgeting in for that on the mortgage
Right.
rates.
Yeah. Yeah. So talking about mortgage, that was our next topic. So let's go over there. He's one of his biggest thing is he's going to lower the mortgage rates, and they've said that it'll come down to 3%. My thing is we're not going to see anything under 4% for the next. I'm going to be bold in saying this, next 5 years.
Yeah.
And 3% ain't going to happen in the next 25 to 30 years. This is just I've been in real estate 25 years. It's just my guess. There's no logic to it. But the 2.5%, 2%, 3% was something they had to do, and it was done, and it just happened, but it's never going to happen again. Just like the 2008 recession, 2004, 5, 6 recession.
Mm-hmm.
Things led up to it. I don't see that thing coming back for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Just my opinion. Same thing with this. But enough said about what my opinion is. Let's go back to the Trump administration lowering the interest rate. First of all, this article says that the Trump has promised lower interest rate, which we already mentioned. That will be largely out of his control. While
Exactly.
Trump has sought to pressure the Fed to cut rates, consumer rates on mortgages and other loans are determined by the range of factors largely outside the president's control. So, Matthew, you might know what are 2 or 3 factors that control the mortgage rates, let alone the interest rate, which the Fed control.
So the mortgage rates very commonly follow, if you look at a chart of mortgage rates and a chart of the 10-year treasury.
I might have that, but yeah, go ahead. Let me find it while you say.
They're almost identical charts in terms of relative gains and ups and downs. Because it's based on the projected future cost of borrowing money. Now, Trump does want to, whether or not he'll be able to or not, I don't know. He does have ambitions of, right now, he doesn't control the Fed. Right now, Jerome Powell doesn't really report to him, and he can't fire Jerome Powell. So he doesn't control the rates, but he wants to change that. That's one of the things he wants to do, is put them under him so that he can say lower interest rates, and they'll do it. But the thing is, the whole Fed system was set up the way it is originally probably by our founders. I don't know when they set that up. For a reason. It was set up that way for very specific reasons. And so it's not really advisable to change that to give someone more power. And there are reasons why, from a layman's perspective, you might say that would be fantastic if Trump lowers rates and just arbitrarily makes them 3%. But that's completely ignoring the impact that has on the macroeconomics of it all. That will the ripple effect of doing that can cause a complete crash of the economy. Even though it might stimulate housing or raise housing prices, it will. There's always a downside to everything. Whenever you do something, you don't get something for nothing. So if you lower interest rates, you're going to be paying in a different way. Other things are gonna be a problem.
Processing fees, underwriting fees, junk fees. All that's gonna come back.
The goal in managing the economy is finding a balance. Finding that balance between not lowering rates too quickly or too much, but also not keeping them high too long. That balance, it's a very, very delicate balance. And I think I think Jerome Powell honestly has been doing a good job so far. We've seen inflation come down and almost to the target of 2.2%. Granted, I've heard the arguments that they're looking at, there's core inflation and then other kinds of inflation. So they do play with the numbers politically and everything. But the point is, inflation came down. I think the general public looks at it like, well, I'm still paying more for my eggs. But the problem is, inflation is the rate of increase. It's not, you're not going to see, if you see the price of eggs actually go in reverse and come down, we've got a problem. That's that's actually a bad thing if you see that.
Right. Right.
The only way out of this is to have the egg prices or whatever they are stay where they are, stop going up or stop going up fast, and have
Right.
wages rise faster. There's no quick way out of this. There's
Right.
no take this pill and all of a sudden your things will be less expensive for
Right.
you. The smart way out is basically stop things from going up but don't cause them to go down, and do things to stimulate wages going up,
Right.
which will they'll catch up. The wages will catch up over.
Mhm.
You're talking like a 10-year span to get
Right.
back to
Right.
a bustling, economy where everything's working the way it's supposed to. So
Yeah. So talking about two things, you mentioned 10-year treasury. Let's talk about that. But before that, I just want to mention one thing to clarify. Take, for example, gas. California gas is most expensive compared to all the states because they have so much. 80-90 cents of it goes to consumers
tax.
like me, call it junk fees. I'm sure they have a reason for it. But let's take a price of gas. It used to be $4. Let's say the price is average $4. And in the last 2 years, it went up to $6, which it did to 6.5, almost $7 a square per
Wow.
gallon. Now, when you said they should not come down, you don't mean them coming down to back to $5 or $4, but you don't want them to fall below 4, which is a norm. So I just
Yeah,
want to
well,
clarify that.
gas prices.
Any item,
Oh,
eggs. Let's say eggs were selling for $4 a dozen. They went up to 5 during inflation. Now they're down to 4 to 4.5, which is okay. But what you don't want to see is them to go to 350. Just to
yeah,
clarify.
they're not going to go all the way back to where they were before,
Right.
right? In a very quick way, because
Mhm.
without a lot of pain caused in other ways.
Right.
That's you just can't do it.
Right.
And
Right.
you can't
Okay.
force it to happen.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So I
so
want to talk about the 10-year treasury because even I don't understand it 100%. You may know more about it because we as agents, people ask us lending question and we answer what we can, but we always say talk to your lender. They always ask us, hey, if they drop the interest at half a point, the federal funds, when they drop half a point, we tell them those are interest rate, not mortgage rates. So they are related in a way, but not directly because that's the interest rate, not the mortgage interest rate.
mhm.
Usually, in general, the mortgage rates follow the 10-year treasury. Can you differentiate and just explain how that works, just basically for the
Well, I
average
kind of think
consumer?
I may have already touched on that when I
Mhm.
was talking about
Right.
it's the anticipation of what the future cost of borrowing money is going to be.
Right.
And that's what the 10-year treasury is based on.
Right.
When that goes up, it means they're thinking that the market is thinking that it's going to be more expensive, higher rates to come in the
Mhm.
future. And that's kind of the answer right
Right.
there. That's
Why
why
does it treasury go up or down? What makes the treasury bond go up or down? That's the
it's
thing.
it's the anticipation of
Okay.
what the future, because if money is going to be, if rates are anticipated to be higher in the future, then it's something that you want to uh, the people will take money. People decide they have a certain amount of money and they decide whether to put it in the stock market or buy bonds with it.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
times they're inversely related, because if the stock market isn't doing so well, they'll take it out and put it in the bonds. But
Right.
um so it's a combination of looking at what is the future interest rate climate
Mhm.
going to be. Am I better off, and is it smart to lock in my, because bonds go, when the rates go down, the people trade the bonds just like stocks.
Mhm.
When the rates go down, the bond actually goes up. I believe
Right.
they can sell it for more. So when people think that it's just a matter of people are making financial decisions. The people with the money are
Yeah.
making decisions on where to put their money and what the future interest rates are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
influences whether they're putting it in stocks or bonds.
Right. I
Comes
totally
down.
understand. Okay. Well, talking about stocks and bonds, we know last week, as soon as Trump became the president elect, we know what happened to the stock. It went sky high. The Dow Jones was up
Mhm.
$400 the first day, the second day it was up, the third day it was up. Specifically, Tesla stocks had a big impact because Elon Musk is kind of related
Exactly.
business wise, but we're not talking about that. My point was, and of course, they've come down now, but they're still higher than a week ago. How much does the stocks going up significantly affect the mortgage rates and or the housing in the long run?
I mean, in the long run, it is an indication of an expected good economic environment. They're expecting companies to, potentially have higher earnings in the future, and higher earnings are always good for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a good economy that's too good can cause rates to have to go up to slow the economy, because if it gets too good, then you have inflation.
Right,
So sometimes bad news is good and good news is bad, which is
right.
kind of the mode we've been in for the
Yeah.
past year or two.
Yep.
Um, and I think a lot of the run up in the stock market was driven by, well, two things. First of all, the fact that we didn't have to deal with a contested election,
Mm-hmm.
because that was a
Right,
huge thing I think a lot of people were worried about,
right.
including myself.
Okay.
So I'm very happy we didn't have a contested election.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is Trump is very anti-regulation, and so a lot of the regulations do they hold companies back,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how much profit they can make, because they're forced to do things a certain way that maybe isn't the cheapest way for them,
Right. Yep.
for various other reasons.
Right.
So,
Okay. Well, talking about regulation, that was our next thing. One of the other big policies that the Trump administration wants to implement and will implement is deregulation. So let's talk about that. And we're talking about the deregulation specifically for housing, right? Because his
mhm,
goal is to have more inventory and make homes more affordable, right?
yeah,
And one of the ways that he's thinking about bringing policies is make the deregulation cost and time faster and cheaper. We know I've sold several land, right? And if it's a
right,
residential zoning and you want to change it to a commercial zoning, you know, escrows are 7, 8, 9 months, 2 years long. Why does
yeah,
it take 2 years to get a zone change from a commercial to residential or residential to commercial, knowing that it's going to do good to the city or the county?
right,
Um, the cost, in fact, let me read some stats. This is from the National Association of Realtors, and that's one of the reasons where the Trump administration wants to reduce regulation, permit fees, regulation fees, because it's a big chunk. Look at this stat, and I didn't know about this until I came across it. It says that the National Association of Home Builders study found that an average of 24.3% of a home's final selling price is made up of local, state, and federal regulatory cost. These are permits and fees and junk fees.
mhm,
I mean, I didn't know it was that much.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think that of all the things we've talked about, this is the one that, from a purely financial perspective, probably will have a good impact on bringing the cost down. It may counteract some of the other things we talked about previously and offset some of it.
Hmm.
Um, the thing is, it's a matter of what extreme you go to. You can have too much regulation or not enough, and either is bad. So a lot of these regulations, some of them are put in place for very good reasons. So you may have cheaper construction costs because you don't have to go through the regulatory process as
Hmm.
much, but now you're stuck with a house that's built with, lax building codes that
Right, right,
that falls apart after you close on it,
right,
and or complete ignoring of environmental factors, just poisoning streams and rivers, and drinking water supplies and everything.
Right.
A lot of those regulations are put in place for those reasons, and they have a place. So I'm all for making the processes more efficient, but not
Right.
necessarily removing regulations.
Right.
But
Right.
on a short, it's a matter of short-term horizon or long-term vision.
Right.
Short-term, it might actually be financially beneficial to deregulate. Long-term, you're creating other problems.
Right.
Like,
Okay. Well, let's see what happens. On that note, for those of you watching live or recording, if you have any questions or comments, let us know what you think. We want to know what you think is going to happen. What's your reasoning for thinking, or prices may go down or up, or what the regulation may do or not do. So we'd like to hear from you. So when we do our next live streams, we know what to expect, and we can reach out and let others know of your comments and your suggestions. So we very welcome any comments or questions. The other thing I want to read on this report, it says that the development expenses for homes represent 14.6% of the total cost of regulation, with builder outlays accounting for the remainder. Now, these are development expenses. That means other than permits and fees, right? The development is like construction cost, or planning approval and things like that. Development cost. Are those expenses they're talking about? You think, Matthew? What do you
yeah,
think?
I think they're talking about the getting the appropriate permits and all that. And then the clearing up, putting in the infrastructure. It's
Right.
it's clearing the trees, putting in the sewer infrastructure, all that, and getting it ready to start construction of the houses.
Right.
Um,
Remember, we also have to remember, as a developer, let's say DR Horton or KB Homes or Toll Brothers, when they go in and build 500 home project or a 300 apartment unit, I mean a condo unit, they're paying all these fees to the city and the county and the state, right? But
mhm.
remember, they also have to pay an architect to do all these costs, and those are very, very, very expensive.
Yeah,
I mean, for a home, it may cost you 30, 40, $50,000 for a regular 4-bedroom, 2-bath home. Imagine if you're doing 500 homes, you have 6 building plans, then you have a community association, you have a pool, you have a park, you have a dog park. Those are extra costs that the developer has to pay
yeah.
on top of the regulatory fees. That we're not even counting that in regulatory fees.
But I should point out that most of those kind of fees with permitting and all that are handled at the very local level.
Mm-hmm.
So they're handled by, like, I live in Cobb County, Georgia, and over here you'd be going through the process with Cobb County, Georgia. So at the federal level, there's not much impact on that, like that the president will have, because local politicians are going to drive that more so.
Right. And not only that, my opinion is that if I'm a county, whatever, right? County marshal or county governor or city governor or city planner or treasurer, I'm not going to take that away because I want to increase those fees, because what do those fees go to the county? If I'm a city and people are asking for more parks or more schools or better sanitation, better roads, better lights, where does the money come from?
Yeah.
It comes
Again,
from this
it's
fee. So I want to increase those fees,
yeah, again, it's a balance.
Yeah.
Either extreme is no good.
Yeah, exactly. It's a balance.
If you remove if you get too regulatory and you start making the cost of building something so exorbitant that nobody wants to do it,
Right.
you're creating a problem. But if you
Yeah.
remove all regulation and you just say build whatever you want, wherever you want, however you want, then it's equally as bad. It's
Right.
a
Right.
matter of finding the
Yeah.
right balance.
No, we need a balance, and we want it to be balanced because not talking as a realtor or lender, as a general person, if I'm a home buyer, I want to pay as low of interest rates as possible. I want to pay as low home prices as possible. So if Trump and his administration can drop the prices, I'm going to jump, because hey, my kids are going to buy houses and they're getting so expensive. So any drop in fees, any drop in home prices, I'll be glad. We have a comment, so let me respond and maybe we can ask him some
Sure.
questions. So
comments.
Can you see it on your screen or no?
I can now. I just switched to the well, let's see. Regulations out of control.
He's saying that tariffs are needed, and then HOAs is a robbery. So, Chris, if you are listening, if you can hear us, tell us why you feel tariffs are needed and how they can help or not help. If you can make a comment, we'd be glad to put it out there so others can know. So, the question he asked, Chris, is the HOAs are robbery, but tariffs are needed. And if he can answer back, we'll get back to that. But while he's doing that, and if he does that, I'm going to read out the last part of this report, which we can discuss further. Is that the NAHB, which I believe is the National Association of Home Builders, said that although the percentage of housing regulatory burdens are still fairly in line with its 2011 estimates of 25%, home prices have skyrocketed, resulting in a near 30% rise in the dollar value of those costs, from $65,000 in 2011 to $85,000 in 2016. So I don't know if that's good or bad or what you take from that.
Right. So, well, I think this is kind of redundant with what we had, what we were talking about with the regulations. I think we've kind of covered that,
Right.
fairly well. We did get another comment from Chris.
Yes, go
He's
ahead.
coming from that perspective that we were we were robbed by other countries charging us and us not charging them. Yeah, I mean, it's there, like I said, there are, there's if you look at it from a layman's perspective, it sounds great that we're gonna do more, try to drive more manufacturing and more things internally.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish it was that easy. That's the thing. If we could do that, it would be great. But I would like Chris to kind of expand upon, does he believe that charging the tariffs will cause the goods to go up in price or not? And if
Mm-hmm.
not, I'd love to know what you and I are missing on that.
Okay.
If the companies importing stuff have to pay a tariff, what are they going to do? Are they going to just make a lower profit?
Right.
Or are they going to sell their goods at a loss? That's what I don't think anyone's going to pay 300, 500,000 to build a house and sell it for 300,000.
Right.
It's
Okay.
not going to work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, while we're waiting for Chris to respond, I want to move on to our next and last topic that we want to discuss on tariff. There are other topics, but these are the five I thought were the most important, most impactful, if and when they get applied or implemented or passed by whoever passes it, the cabinets and the Congress and the Senate, so many other things. The last thing I want to talk about is rezoning and the use of federal land to build affordable housing within budget and increased inventory and drop the prices, right? So I have two slides. First of all, let's talk about, not this one, let's see, this one here. Trump's plan to build more homes on federal land could push prices higher. Well, that was not the point. The point is that he's trying to build more homes on federal land. So I'm going to take that out and show you another slide. So let me find that slide. It is federal land. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about the federal land before we go into this slide. There is about 30% of all the land in USA is owned by the federal government, right? And most of it is towards the West Coast. I had those states there, but I don't have them right now. But most of them are towards the west, northwest. I mean, on the west side, lots of land there. We have the Grand Canyon, with the Yosemite, you have the California mountains and things like that. One, there'll be a lot of resistance from the people who are, friendly climate people, who want to conserve the trees and the insects and the animals and all that. But beyond that, Trump's plan to transform federal land into housing will be costly, given minimal existing infrastructure, UBS says. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure where I got this from, but it's a legit report. The firm says his homeowners' tax incentives, meanwhile, could boost buyer competition in a supply limited market. Those policies, plus a set of potentially inflationary proposals, could drive up both home prices and mortgage rates. So that's what the report says. But in general, if I was a consumer, and if somebody tells me, hey, you know what? We have extra hundreds and hundreds of acres and homes are going to be built. My thing is, wow, that's good. Inventory is going to go up. So the home prices are going to go down. So as a consumer, I think the home prices are going to go down and it's going to be homes. But if you think of it as a politician or a realtor or lender, are the chances the prices will go up or they will go down? And I also want to talk about infrastructure around those homes. I'll talk about that later.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it depends what federal land you're talking about. Obviously, you don't want to take, Yosemite Park or the Grand Canyon and start building on it. I don't think anyone would be in favor of that. But if there's land that's literally not being used for anything and it's just being held by the government for whatever future use, I actually do think, I mean, we have an affordability issue. We have a supply issue. It's not a terrible idea it's not a terrible idea to actually build on some of that and create some affordable housing. It would have to be coupled with some making sure that it is affordable housing and not just more unaffordable housing, but I think, there are also other ways. I didn't mention, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to mention this. I had an idea as an owner of some rental properties myself, and knowing what's going on, how we have a supply shortage, which is causing affordability issues. One of the things that I came up with myself, and I haven't heard anyone talk about this, but I think it's a great idea, and I'm putting it out there in case anyone has any pull. A lot of homes are owned by corporations now. At least in my market, it's crazy. Like especially the lower end affordable homes for starter homes, they're owned by BlackRock and these big companies,
private equity firms, and
equity firms. Right. That is driving up the cost and on both rentals and ownership. And a good way to solve that problem, ironically, those were the people that took us out of the Great Recession, because when nobody was buying houses, they came in and bought up all the foreclosure inventory and saved us from a true depression back in 2009.
Right. Okay.
I, fortunately for myself, picked up a few rental properties back then. But now I've got a situation where my properties went up in value quite a bit. Right. I would actually like to sell them and cash out, but the capital gains tax keeps me with the golden handcuffs to these properties. And I think the big corporations are in the same boat. Yeah. So if they did some kind of a capital gains tax holiday, it would encourage those companies to take advantage of that and sell some of their rental inventory, which would then put more supply on the market. In fact, you'd have to do it in a very controlled way. Otherwise, you'd have too many homes go on the market. Right. You'd have to say each company can sell no more than, X percent, like 10% of their holdings. And they can only sell them to owner occupants.
I think that's a great idea.
And if they do, if they sell to an owner occupant, then they get either a discount on capital gains or maybe even a complete capital gains tax waiver.
Yeah.
And that would solve both problems, and it would create affordability and be a very controlled way of doing it, because you could adjust the percentage that they can sell.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Matthew. You should take a crowd and go to Washington. You got a point there.
There you go. I have no interest in being in politics, but this is what the stuff I think about late at night. And I'm like, why are they not talking about
Right,
this?
right. Can you see he asked another question. Maybe I'll let you answer it. It's the one that says, I always like to look at both sides. And then he has another question. If you can answer that, if you'd like to, if you can read it, then
You're asking me to read it?
if you want to, yeah.
Okay, what was the other question?
It says here, yeah, if you go back at 5:21 p.m., he just wrote something. It starts with, I always like to look at.
At 5, wait. Which would be 8:21 p.m. for me.
Right, your time,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, 8:21. Okay, I always like to look at both sides. What if we needed them to survive or become so dependent we couldn't function without it? I don't want any foreign country controlling us. Yeah, I think we have become. That's kind of the point here. Is we've become dependent on them because so many are working in agriculture. Like I said, the time to correct this was before we started down this road in the 70s of you know, it is. Yeah. I mean, if you suddenly removed all of the illegal immigrants at once, you are creating a problem because we become so dependent on them. That's the point we're trying to make. I mean, there's controlling the border better and keeping more from coming in is one thing. And you could do a selective deportation, but then how do you choose who gets deported and who doesn't? Of course, you could start with the ones who committed crimes. That would be something that I think would be a way to limit it, but that's only a very small percentage.
Right. Hey, I want to make a note that you mentioned that we are so dependent on foreign goods or whatever. Let me talk about, just because I'm from India, I'm not going to talk about that, but let's look at software and IT. So many IT people, software people, engineers are from India and other countries, right? We have become dependent on so much on them that you cannot just let them go because one, they provide the sources, they have the knowledge, they have the capability and the technology, which is way ahead of the game. So all these companies, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Nvidia, how many people do they employ? And I'm just talking about India because I know the stats. I don't know about the other countries. It's a huge number. And the point is, we have become so dependent on foreign expertise, foreign supplies, foreign goods, foreign shipping, whatever. And to get rid of that is going to take years to do it.
Yeah, well, I think big companies like Apple and stuff, they're not employing illegal immigrants. They can't. There are laws in place that require employers to verify people's legal work status. So
Right.
Anybody who Apple is hiring, I'm sure, is legally here on either a work visa or something of that.
Right. The point is that we rely so much on foreign expertise. That was my point. That when you said we rely on goods from foreign countries and supplies from foreign countries, even the services we rely on from foreign. So you cannot just cut it off.
No, and I don't think anybody's suggesting we cut it off. I think they're just saying we keep people from just walking across the border illegally without going through an immigration process or having a purpose to be here, paying taxes.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, if someone's coming here for a reason, then I don't think anybody really thinks that's an issue, or even Trump, I don't think wants to get rid of all immigrants. I mean, his wife is an immigrant.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just focusing on the illegal immigrants. There is a differentiation.
Okay. Well, let's turn the topic around a little bit. We've been kind of talking, yes, good and bad, and kind of bad news, good news. Let's talk about a few things where if you're a buyer, if you're a seller, if you're an investor, the question is, should I wait to sell? Should I wait to buy? Should I wait for the interest rate to drop? Should I wait for home prices to drop? As a lender and a realtor and having an investor in your case, if I'm a typical buyer, me in the sense there's a typical buyer who wants to buy a house, and I'm waiting for the rates to drop, and I've been waiting for 2 years, 3 years, I'm waiting for the prices to drop, what would you tell them?
What I would tell them is, if there's a big difference if you're looking to, do a short-term investment where you're going to buy a house and hold it for 1 year and then sell it and think you're going to make a profit on it. Maybe it's not the best time to do that, you know. But if you're weighing the option of buying something versus renting, okay,
Mhm.
and you're planning on being in that house for, at least a 5-year horizon, you're going to end up better off buying. And unless the only scenario where you wouldn't would be if home prices dropped for some reason, but even if they dropped, you would also have to sell during the drop, because you don't have to sell. That's just a paper loss. If I buy a house for 500,000, it goes down to 450. I don't have to sell, and it will come back. It always does.
Right.
Um,
Long term, right.
Long term, it will always come back, because homes are appreciating assets. They always have been, and I would think always will be.
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
rate of appreciation will change, but it, so I don't, and you can't time the market. I mean, that's like trying to say, when should I buy more stocks, or should I sell all my stocks?
Yeah.
And then if you sell and the market goes up, you missed out on
Mhm.
opportunity. And if you buy and it goes down, then you're like, well, I should have waited, should have, would
Mhm.
have, could have. But
Right.
the truth is, if you need a home and you're doing it for lifestyle reasons, or your family expanded and you need more space, just go ahead and do it. Don't try to time the market. And if rates become more favorable, you can always refinance. And if they don't, then you're locked in for 30 years at whatever. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, look at all the money you throw. These people that have been waiting for 3 years for interest rates to come down, they've thrown away 3 years worth of rent. They're paying, that's like $75,000 they paid on rent in three,
Mhm.
3 years
Yeah.
on a $2,000 a month apartment. So,
Right. Right.
yeah. And if you're going to be in a house for more than 5 years, the rent versus buy equation
Right.
always is in favor of buying.
What
Always.
about the mortgage? If I'm thinking, you know what, my cousin bought it at 4%. My other cousin bought it at 3.5%. I want to buy, and I'm qualified, but I don't want to pay 6.5. How would you handle that?
Well, you kind of have, I mean, your only choice is to either pay, if that's what the market rate
Exactly.
is, you either
Right.
pay it,
Yep.
or you, if you're very financially fortunate, you could do a 15-year loan and get a lower rate.
Mhm.
Um, sometimes we can negotiate, if you get a lot of seller paid closing costs, you can apply it towards buying your rate down.
Right.
I don't recommend doing that, because chances are, well, before all this talk about tariffs and everything, the general consensus was that rates would go down, and they were heading
Uh-huh.
downward.
Mhm.
And if that is the case, then you don't want any money you pay up front to buy your rate down. If you end up refinancing in a year or two, you're not getting that back. So you're better off paying a little higher rate for a short
Right.
period of time. And then,
Right. Okay.
but,
Okay. I
and I
want to.
noticed
Yeah.
somebody said something about being in a bubble.
Yeah,
The
that's Chris again.
housing.
So I'll let you
Okay.
answer that or give your opinion on that. Yeah. Hey,
So,
thanks, Chris, by the way, for giving us the opportunity to comment and answer your question. Appreciate it.
yeah. So, I mean, housing prices are always, it comes down to supply and demand. And the only thing that's going to make a bubble or make prices come down is if we get to a point where we have more supply than we have demand.
Mhm.
That's the only way, really. And I mean, if someone could expand on how they think that's going to happen. Right now, we have a supply shortage, and because of the rapid rise in interest rates, people are like myself are not rushing to put our house on the market. We're not selling because I got a 2.75% interest rate, and if I move, I got to take that 6.5%, 7% rate.
Yep.
So
Yep.
downsizing makes no sense because
Yep.
my smaller house will be more higher monthly payment than my bigger house. So, where's the supply going to come from? The other thing is, like in 2008, when we lived through the bubble or the crash, it was because of all the foreclosures, mass amounts of foreclosures. But people have more equity now than ever in like the history of the country. If you look, I don't have a chart to pull up, but I remember seeing
I'll show
somewhere
you one.
that
I'll come up with one. I'll
was
bring it up.
something
Yeah.
like 50% of people, have like more than 80% equity
Mhm.
in their home. So people are not upside down on their house like they were back then.
Right.
So you have to kind of tell me, where is that supply going to come from? And I just don't see it. The shortage. Okay. So Chris says the shortage is coming from those large companies I was talking about that buy houses. Okay.
Right. Mhm.
So if we were to have high unemployment, um, then they would put those on the market. I mean, I suppose if something happened that caused those companies to put all of their inventory on the market at the same time, we probably would see house prices go down as on a temporary basis. But if you look at the long-term history of house prices, they on average, just like everybody, typically gets a cost of living increase. It is normal for all products and services to go up and inflate. A certain level of inflation is normal. And that level is usually, like on houses, about maybe 3 to 5% per year. So if a house is going up by 3 to 5% per year, that's a normal market. Now we've had prices going up, 15, 20% in a year, which is a lot more. But if you have 20% growth in one year, yeah, the prices are inflated, but the longer it stays at that price, and if it stops going, like in my market, it stopped going up at that rate. It's kind of plateaued. The prices have not come down, but they're not going up. They're kind of staying flat. And every
Mhm.
year that they stay flat, what's happening is we're getting closer and closer to where we would have been had we just had 5% appreciation for the last 4 years instead of 20% in 1 year.
Right. Yeah.
So if it sustains like that for a long enough period of time, we're going to reach that point on the chart where home prices are right where they should be.
Right.
And
Okay.
if we do go down in 4 years or so, we're going to be back at that point where the fair price that you would expect, that's not an inflated price, is now what it is today.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to make a point on what you said and what Chris said, that a lot of the corporations own all these homes, so there's a shortage. Actually, the shortage is not because of that. And 72% of all the rentals, the mom and pop rental time, I'm talking about houses and duplexes and fourplexes, 72% of all of those are owned by mom and pops,
Mm-hmm.
like me, like, Matthew owns one, I own some, right? Only the rest of the 28 to 30% is owned by corporations. So, and the point I'm getting at is that they only own 30% of all those rentals. So that's not creating the shortage. There's two things. There are a lot of things creating the shortage. Let me give you two things that are creating a shortage right now in the last 2-3 years, and why it may cause shortage in the next 1 or 2 years. One, as Matthew mentioned, is the low interest rate. He's got 2.75%. I've got 3%. I'm not selling to a smaller home and paying 7%. I'm not going to do that. So that's one reason. And this is nationwide, right? So people like us are not moving because there's everybody, 80% of all the loans that were out there 3-4 years ago refinanced at a rate at under 5%, actually 4.5%. They're not going to move. The
Yeah, and I'm
second
a
reason
new
a lot of
empty
people are not going
nester.
to, What
I'm
was
a
that?
new empty nester. I would have moved to a smaller house, and I'm
Exactly.
not for
Right.
that.
And the other reason they're not going to move, for example, I'll take my example, and I know there's a lot of other people like that. During the COVID, a lot of people who could not move because we could not go see homes, we could not sell homes, we could not go anywhere. What did people do? They got bored. And because they could not go, what do? A lot of people, they went to Home Depot, they went to Ace Hardware, they went to cabinet shops, they remodeled their kitchens, they remodeled their bathrooms, they remodeled their homes. They could not move. They took the money they had, remodeled their homes, spent a lot of money. Guess what? Including me, I changed my whole house inside. I'm not going anywhere. My down payment I spend on remodeling. I love my remodel. I'm not moving. That's another reason why a lot of people are not moving. And that's not going to change all of a sudden, so that's two reasons why the inventory is going to be lower. And you mentioned, Chris, that death and retirement happens every day. That has happened right now in a shortage of inventory market, and that happened in the high inventory market. So that kind of wipes itself out. But yeah,
Yeah,
that is right. A lot of people
and
sell homes because of death in the family. That's
there's
sad.
another factor too to
Mhm.
look at. There are, if I remember correctly, and again, I don't have a chart, but I remember hearing that I think it was the millennial generation is huge. It's almost like another baby boom. Okay. If you look at the number of people in different age groups, you've got your baby boomers, your Gen X,
Mhm.
the millennials, and the Gen Y or Gen Z, whatever. Some of those groups, which are the groups that are like, and I think it was millennials, which are really in the peak home buying age, are
Mhm.
are a very, very large group of people, like almost as much as the baby boom. So that just means there's more people. So they're going to absorb more inventory of houses.
Yep, exactly.
So
All right, I think we're at 112. We've had a lot of discussion. Hopefully, what we discussed was very informative. I learned something from it. I thank you, our guest. Chris was very active. I know we had some other guests, but they did not comment, which we totally understand. Thanks for watching. Please make some comments
yeah,
if
I'm
you're
going to
watching a
go ahead and
recording.
I'll
Yeah,
put my contact info in the comments as well in case anybody wants.
sure. And I have your contact info in my description. All your website, your YouTube channel, I have all that already
Okay.
in my description for this video and live stream. I've got your name, your phone number, your email. So guys, if you are in the Atlanta area, or if you have any questions towards the East Coast, Matthew shares information is in the description. His YouTube channel, his email, his phone numbers. Feel free to contact him. You're always welcome to contact me for any questions. If you need any resources, or if you know somebody who's thinking about moving and cannot pull the trigger and want to know why this may be a good time to move or not a good time to move, I'll be glad to talk to them just to give them information. So thank you again for watching. Chris, you've been a great information for not only me, but also for our viewers. I hope to bring you back. If you have any last minute comments, I'll let you do that.
All right. Yeah, I'm just putting mine in. I don't
Yes,
know how
take
you
your
hit the
time.
space bar without it
Take your time. Yeah.
going, but okay. I'll just put that. I don't know if you can. Oh, failed to post. Post.
I saw your post. You said Matthew share.
Yeah, I don't know. It's telling me it. Well, that was an accident. That was because I hit the enter key, thinking I'd go to the next line. I was going
Oh,
to put my phone number.
try it again. Try it one more time. Just type
But
something in
it's
and
telling me that it failed. I don't
try it
know,
again. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
but well, let's just see. I'm just gonna put my cell number
Okay.
in here. Let's see if that goes. Yeah, I don't know. It's not taking it.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
678-520-3113. If anybody wants to reach
Yeah.
out.
Let me try to put it. Matthew number. What is it?
678
678.
520-3113.
See if it takes that. There you go. Okay.
Worked. Okay.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you to our guest. Again, I have these live streams every Monday at 4:30. If you prefer a different time or if there's a better time, please propose to me because I'm thinking about changing the time to get more viewers. Because some of the East Coast people have told me that hey, 7:30 start is a little bit late. Some of them have kids and things like that. So I've had comments like that. So I may reconsider changing. It may take a few weeks for me to do that, but I'm considering it. So your input is welcome. Again, thanks, Matthew. Appreciate it, and
I
we'll see
appreciate
you
it.
next time.
Thank you for having me on as a guest.
All right. Thanks. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye bye.